Jacob's ladder. Esau did not speak of his rage and hatred to his father, but neither did he keep it to himself. The news of his great anger spread, and his vengeful words soon came to the ears of Rebekah, his mother. She sent at once for Jacob and warned him of his danger. "Hear me, my son," she said. "Your brother Esau has sworn that he will kill you. Therefore obey my voice and go away from here. Flee to my brother Laban at Haran. Stay with him for a few days until your brother's fury turns away and he forgets what you have done to him. Then I will send for you and bring you back, for I do not want to lose you." Then she went to Isaac. Instead of telling him that she was afraid for Jacob's life, she brought up a question that she knew was close to Isaac's heart. "I am weary of my life," she said, "because of the daughters of the Hittites. Esau has already married among them, and that is not the way of our people. If Jacob also takes a wife from those Hittite daughters of the land, what good is my life to me?" Neither did her husband wish their second son to marry one of the women of Canaan. Isaac called Jacob to him and blessed him. "You shall not take a wife of the daughters of Canaan," he told his younger son. "Go to Padan Aram, to the house of Bethuel from which your mother came, and find a wife among the daughters of your mother's brother Laban. May God Almighty bless you and give to you the blessing of Abraham, so that you will have many children and inherit this land that God has given us." And thus did Isaac send Jacob away, and Jacob left his home in Beersheba and began his long and lonely journey to Haran. He did not know then that he was to be away for far longer than a few days, and that he would never see his mother again. When Esau saw that Isaac had again blessed Jacob and sent him away to Padan Aram to find a wife instead of marrying one of the daughters of the Hittites, he realized that his marriages to the women of Canaan did not please his father. He therefore took another wife, and this time he chose a daughter of his father's half-brother Ishmael, son of Abraham and Hagar. In the meantime, Jacob was making his way across the hills and plains of Canaan, feeling unhappy and afraid. At last he came to a certain place where there were rocks for shelter, and because the sun had set, he decided to stay there for the night. He took one of the stones of the place for a pillow, and lay down to sleep on his hard bed. As he slept, he dreamed. In his dream, he saw a ladder with its feet set upon the earth, and the top of it reaching to the heavens, and the angels of God were going up and down upon it. And he saw the Lord God standing there above it, and the Lord spoke to him and said, "I am the Lord God of Abraham, and the God of Isaac. The land on which you are lying, this will I give to you and to your children. Your descendants shall be as many as there is dust upon the earth, and they will spread to the west, to the east, to the north, and to the south, and through them shall all the families of the earth be blessed. Behold, I am with you, and I will be with you wherever you may go, and I will bring you back again into this land, for I will not leave you until I have done what I have promised." Jacob awoke from his sleep. He looked about him in the starlit night, and he saw that he was alone. But he did not feel alone, and he said, "Surely the Lord is with me in this place, and I did not know it." And he felt great awe. "How wonderful is this place," he said reverently. "It is none other than the house of God, and this is the gate of heaven." He rose early the following morning and took the stone he had used for a pillow and set it upright as if it were a pillar in monument to something holy. Then he anointed it with oil as an offering to God, and now indeed it was a holy monument. Though the name of the place was Luz, he renamed it Bethel, or the house of God. And he made a vow, saying, "If God will be with me and watch over me as I go, and give me bread to eat and clothes to wear, and let me come again to my father's house in peace, then I shall know that the Lord is truly my God. And this stone, which I have set here for a pillar of worship, shall be God's house, and of all that God gives me, I will surely give back to him a tenth." Then Jacob left the place that he had dedicated to the Lord and went on with his journey to Haran.
Rachel and Leah. Though Jacob traveled alone, he was not lonely, for the Lord watched over him as he went along his way. After several days in the desert, he came into the land of the people of the east, where Rebekah's family dwelled, and he saw a sight that was a welcome change from the miles of rugged rock and desert sand that he had covered on his journey. It was a fertile field, such as herds and flocks use for their grazing, and Jacob knew that he had come again into the company of men. He looked about him and saw a well in the field, and there were 3 flocks of sheep lying near it, while their shepherds talked idly among themselves. This was the well out of which all the flocks in the neighborhood were watered, and a great stone covered its mouth while it was not in use. The stone was very heavy, so that it was only when all the flocks were gathered together that the shepherds would roll the stone from the well's mouth, give water to their sheep, and then put the stone back into place over the mouth of the well. Jacob greeted the men. "Where are you from, my brothers?" he asked of them. "We are from Haran," they answered, "and this is Haran's well." Jacob's heart was full of joy, for he was at his journey's end, and soon he would see his mother's family. "Do you know Laban, of the family of Nahor?" he asked. And they said, "We know him." "Is he well?" asked Jacob. "He is well," replied the shepherds. "Look yonder, there comes his daughter Rachel with the sheep." Jacob looked and saw her coming, and he noticed again that the well was covered, even though the flocks were lying nearby. "What are you waiting for?" he asked. "It is high noon. Why do you not give water to your sheep, and then take them to the field and let them feed?" "We cannot," they answered, "until all the flocks are gathered together, and the stone is rolled away from the mouth of the well. Then we water the sheep, but they are not all here yet." And while Jacob was still talking to them, Rachel came to the well with her father's sheep, for it was she who tended them. When Jacob looked at Rachel, the daughter of his mother's brother Laban, he decided that so comely a girl should not be kept waiting until all the flocks were there. He went quickly to the mouth of the well and rolled the heavy stone away without the help of any other man, and afterward he himself watered the flock of Laban, his mother's brother. Then he turned to the lovely girl and saw that she was looking at him with surprise, for she was not used to such special treatment from her neighboring shepherds. "You are my cousin Rachel," he told her, "for I am Jacob, the son of Rebekah, who is your father's sister." And then Jacob kissed Rachel and wept tears of joy. So glad was he to see a member of his family after his long journey. He was glad, too, to meet such a lovely relative so soon after arriving at Haran. Rachel hurried home to tell her father of the meeting at the well, and when Laban heard that Jacob, his own sister's son, had come to visit them, he ran to meet him. The 2 men embraced warmly, and Laban welcomed Jacob into his house. Jacob told him again what he had told Rachel, and gave his uncle news of Rebekah and her home in Canaan. "Surely you are my flesh and bone," said Laban, "and you shall stay with us and be welcome." Jacob stayed with him, working in the fields and helping Laban with his flocks and cattle. During his youth in Canaan, among his father's flocks, Jacob had become a skillful shepherd farmer, and his knowledge of farming with animals was much greater than that of his uncle Laban. And Laban saw that he was very useful to him in the fields. He said to Jacob, "Because you are my sister's son, should you therefore work for me for nothing? No, you shall be paid for your services. Tell me, what should your wages be?" Now Laban had 2 daughters. Leah, the older of the 2, was plain-looking and undesirable in Jacob's eyes, but Rachel the younger was beautiful and pleasing to look upon, and Jacob had loved her from the start. He said to Laban, "I will serve 7 years for your younger daughter Rachel." Laban nodded agreeably. "It is better that I give her to you than to any other man. It is agreed then. Stay with me, and my daughter shall be yours." At the end of his term of service, Jacob approached his uncle Laban. "Give me my wife," he said, "because I have fulfilled our agreement, and the days are ended." Again Laban agreed. He gathered together all the men of the place and prepared a wedding feast. The men feasted long and heartily, and when it was late evening, Laban called his daughter to him with her handmaid Zilpah. But the daughter whom he called to him was Leah, not Rachel, and it was Leah in a thick wedding veil that he took to Jacob in the darkness of the night. And thus did Jacob marry Laban's daughter after 7 years of service. In the light of morning, Jacob looked and saw the face of his bride, and he saw that instead of his beloved Rachel, it was Leah. He did not love her, and he had not wanted her, and he was outraged at Laban's trick. "What have you done to me?" he said to Laban angrily. "Did I not serve 7 years with you so that I might marry Rachel? Why have you deceived me?" Laban managed to look surprised, and came out with the excuse that he had prepared years before when he had made his promise to Jacob. "It is not the custom in our country," he said smoothly, "to give the younger in marriage before the firstborn. Surely you knew that." He might have added that he had taken the only course he could think of to find a husband for his homely elder daughter, and that he wanted Jacob to stay there because he needed him, but it was not his way to say the honest thing and deal fairly with a man when he could gain by tricking him. "But you have no reason to be angry," he went on. "Spend a week with Leah, then marry Rachel also as soon as the week is out. Many men have more than one wife, so shall you have Leah and Rachel. Or you shall if you agree to serve me yet another 7 years. Laban drove a hard bargain. 14 years of work for Jacob for the sake of one woman whom he loved and one woman whom he loved not. But Jacob agreed, for he loved Rachel very deeply and wanted more than anything in the world that she should be his wife. He spent his week with Leah, as required by custom, and then he married Rachel. Laban gave Rachel his handmaid Bilhah to wait upon her and obey her, and thus did Jacob's household increase. It increased a great deal more as the years went by, and Jacob continued to work hard and well for his scheming uncle Laban, but the increase was largely through the woman he had not intended to marry, rather than through the woman that he loved more than any other. He was husband to them both, but he loved Rachel far more than he could ever think of loving plain Leah, and Leah could not help knowing that she had not been wanted. She felt as though both Rachel and Jacob hated her, and her life was exceedingly unhappy. But when the Lord saw that Leah was sorrowful, he gave her his own love and mercy, so that she had children by Jacob, while Rachel could not and did not have a child. In a short space of time Leah had 4 sons, whom she named Reuben, Simeon, Levi, and Judah. And then for a while she had no more children. But her younger sister Rachel had no children at all, beautiful and beloved though she was, and envy ate into her heart.
Jacob and Laban. It was a shame and a disgrace for a Hebrew woman not to have a child, or so Rachel thought. Childless, Sarah had felt bitter and ashamed for many years. Rebekah had been unhappy for a long time before her twins were born, and now Rachel was suffering in the same way. She envied her sister Leah with a bitterness that was close to hatred, and she turned to Jacob with her reproaches. "Give me children, or else I die," she begged. Jacob's anger roused against her, because it was not his fault that she had no children. "Do you think that I am God to have withheld a child from you?" he said wrathfully. And Rachel knew that he was not to blame. But, like Sarah, she was almost desperate to give her husband a child that she could call her own, whether she herself bore it or not, so she thought of a way to do it. "Take my handmaid then," she said to Jacob. "Go to Bilhah, that I may also have a child by her." Jacob did as his wife asked him, and Bilhah had first one son and then another. Rachel was pleased and grateful to the Lord, for at least it was her own handmaid who had had the children, and not the envied Leah. And then Leah, who had stopped bearing children for a while, decided to follow Rachel's course and give her own handmaid to her husband. So she gave Zilpah to Jacob, and in time Zilpah had 2 sons on behalf of Leah. Thereupon Leah herself had 2 more sons, followed by a daughter. Rachel's offspring by this time were hopelessly outnumbered, and she still did not have a child whom she could truly say was her very own. And then at long last Rachel bore a son, and she felt that she must surely be the happiest mother alive. "God has taken away my shame and given me a child," she said joyfully, and she called him Joseph. Jacob was just as pleased as Rachel, for he still loved her more than Leah, and so he loved his youngest baby Joseph more than all the rest. Now he had 12 children altogether, 1 girl, whose name was Dinah, and 11 boys. It was not long after Joseph was born that the 14 years of Jacob's promised service to Laban came to an end. During all that time, Jacob had had no news of his parents, and he wanted to go home again. He went to Laban and said to him, "Send me away, so that I may go back to my own country. Give me my wives and my children, for whom I have served you through all these years, and let me take them with me, for you know that I have given you the service that I promised." Laban knew it very well. He also knew that Jacob was a very skilled shepherd and herdsman who had added much to Laban's wealth by his knowledge of animal farming. What was more, Jacob's expert services had cost Laban nothing but 2 daughters, for whom he would have had to find husbands anyway. He had given low wages indeed for the work of 14 years. "I pray you," Laban said earnestly, "if I have found favor in your eyes, then do not leave me. While you have been with me, I have done well, so I beg you to stay. I have learned by experience that the Lord has blessed me because of you. Stay here. Tell me what wage you want, and I will give it to you." Jacob answered carefully, for he had realized in the course of the years that Laban was cunning enough to cheat him again if he should have the chance. And Jacob himself still had some of the craftiness he had used on his brother Esau. "You know how I have served you," he began, "and how your flocks and cattle have improved under my care. For what you had was little when I came, and now it has increased into a multitude. It is true that the Lord has blessed you since my coming. But what do I have? All these possessions are yours, and I have nothing. When shall I provide for my own home?" "What shall I give you then?" Laban asked again. Jacob's answer was a surprise to him. "You shall not give me anything," he answered. "If you will do one thing for me, then I will stay to tend your sheep and cattle, and make my wage in my own way. I will go through your flocks and herds today, and remove all the sheep and cattle that are speckled and spotted, and all the brown sheep as well, and also the spotted and speckled and striped among the goats. Whatever flocks and herds I may build up from these will be my price of hire. And when the time comes for me to receive my wage from you, you will be able to tell at once that I have taken no animal into my flock that does not belong to me. For I will have nothing in my flocks or herds that is not marked as I have said, nor any sheep that is not brown. Or you will know that I have stolen from you, and I will not steal." Laban quickly agreed to Jacob's proposition. There were not, he knew, more than 1 or 2 brown sheep, nor more than a very few animals that were spotted or speckled or striped. "It will be as you say," he said with a friendly smile. But just to make sure that he had the better end of the bargain, Laban went to the flocks and herds before Jacob could get to them, and removed every animal that was spotted or speckled or striped, every one that had the smallest patch of white in it, and all the brown among the sheep. Then he turned them over to his own sons, and sent them all to a far-off pasture 3 days' journey away from the flock, that Jacob was to tend for him. Jacob looked at what was left of Laban's flock, and saw that he had again been cheated. But he had been expecting it, and his plans were ready. He was a far better farmer than Laban or any of his uncle's sons, and it was not long before he succeeded in breeding several healthy animals that were brown or otherwise marked in the unusual manner he had specified. From these first few he bred others, and then he separated them from Laban's flock and kept them apart from all the other animals. Carefully and with great skill, he fed and watered his own flock so that his animals thrived and became strong. And then he bred the strongest ones together until his own flock of oddly colored but healthy beasts was far bigger than Laban's. So cleverly did he work among the animals that eventually Laban's flock was not only reduced in size, but contained only the weaker of the cattle and sheep, while Jacob himself continued increasing his possessions and his riches. In time, he became very rich in flocks and herds, maidservants and menservants, camels and asses, and all manner of household goods. By this time he had worked for Laban for 20 years, and he had earned his riches through his hard work and his skill. But Laban's own sons were jealous, for now they had much less than Jacob. They began to mutter among themselves about this foreign relative of theirs. Jacob heard the things they were saying about him. "Jacob has taken away all that was our father's," they said angrily. "From what was once our father's he has made all these riches for himself. By trickery he has obtained what should have been ours." He had, it was true, outwitted them. But in whatever he had done, he had stayed strictly within the terms of his bargain with Laban. But they were no longer interested in bargains. They had lost their wealth to Jacob, and that was all they cared about. Then Jacob saw how Laban himself was beginning to look at him, and the look was nowhere near as friendly as it had been in the earlier years when Jacob was working only to make Laban rich. Indeed, Laban's face was very far from friendly. It was time, thought Jacob, for him to be on his way. And the Lord said to him, "I am the God of Bethel, where you anointed the pillar and made a vow to me, and I have seen all that Laban has done to you. Arise now from this place, return to the land of your fathers and to your kindred, and I will be with you." Jacob called Rachel and Leah to him secretly, and told him how God had helped him in his dealings with Laban, and how it was that he had managed to obtain so many sheep and cattle. "And now I see that your father does not feel toward me as before," he said, "because he no longer has all the riches that he had before. But the God of my father has been with me, and it was God who took away the cattle of your father and gave them to me. You know that I have done everything in my power to serve your father, while he has done nothing but deceive me. He has changed my wages 10 times, always saying one thing and then doing the other, and promising me falsely. But God did not permit him to hurt me. The riches that I now have and share with you are ours by right, and God has said to me that I must arise and go. I did deal honestly with Laban, yet he is angry with me. Therefore let us leave, for the Lord my God has told me that I must return to the land of my own kindred." Rachel and Leah listened to him, and both answered, saying, "There is nothing left for us in our father's house. You must do whatever God has said to you, and we will go with you." Jacob went about his arrangements very quietly, for he was sure that Laban would again try to delay him or even prevent him altogether from leaving with his family and possessions. He chose a time for his departure when Laban was in his distant pastures shearing sheep, and then he quickly gathered together everything he had. He did not know that Rachel was taking something that did not belong to her. For while he organized his servants and his flocks, Rachel stole from her father's household certain gods or images of gods that Laban valued highly. So Jacob set his wives and children upon camels and left Paddan Aram without Laban knowing anything about it. He took with him all his flocks and cattle and possessions, and the servants he had gained, and made for his home in the land of Canaan. He and his caravan crossed the river Euphrates, and turned toward Mount Gilead. It was not until 3 days later that Laban heard that they had gone. Rapidly he took stock of what was left and what had been taken, and he was very angry. With his sons and a band of fighting men, he hurried in pursuit. After 7 days' journey, they saw signs of their quarry ahead. For Jacob had stopped on the slopes of Mount Gilead to make camp, and let his great flocks and herds out to pasture. Laban himself pitched his camp before going on to Gilead, and he had a dream by night in which God came to him and warned him that he was neither to harm Jacob nor deceive him with soft words. In the morning, Laban overtook Jacob and pitched his tents near him on the mountain slope. His anger had cooled, but not completely. So he went to Jacob and rebuked him harshly. "What have you done that you have stolen away without my knowledge, and carried off my daughters as if they were captives taken by the sword? Why did you flee away secretly and with such stealth? Why did you not tell me that you were going, so that I might have sent you away with merrymaking, and with songs and tabren and harp? You did not even allow me to kiss my daughters and grandsons before taking them away. That was a foolish thing for you to do. It is in my power to do you harm. But the God of your father spoke to me last night, saying, 'Take heed that you do not speak to Jacob either good or bad.' And yet you have done wrong, and you have angered me. Even though you wanted to be gone because you were longing to return to your father's house, why did you have to steal my household gods?" "What gods?" said Jacob. "I left secretly because I was afraid. For I said to myself, 'Perhaps Laban will take his daughters away from me by force.' But as for your images, your gods, I know nothing of them. Search my tents yourself. Take anything you find that belongs to you. And if anyone has taken your gods, let him not live." For Jacob had no idea that Rachel had taken them. Laban went into the tents and searched them one after the other, but he did not find the missing gods. They were not in Jacob's tent, not in the maidservants, not in Leah's. Then he went to Rachel's tent. Rachel was resting, and she watched her father as he searched. "Do not be displeased, my father," she said to him, "that I cannot rise in your presence, for I am not feeling well." And Laban allowed her to remain seated, and he did not find the images. For Rachel had hidden the images in her camel's saddle, and she was sitting on them. When Laban left the tents with empty hands, Jacob was angry for having been accused falsely of stealing. "What have I done wrong?" he chided Laban. "What is my sin that you have so hotly pursued me? Now that you have searched through all my possessions, what have you found of your household gods? Set it here, whatever you have found, in front of your brothers and my brothers, so that they may judge between us." And there was nothing for Laban to set down, for Rachel still sat in her tent upon the stolen images. "These 20 years I have been with you," Jacob went on angrily, "and in all that time I have stolen nothing from you of your flocks or household goods. Your ewes and she-goats have been well and healthy, for I tended them with care, and of the rams of your flock I have not eaten. When wild beasts took any of your flock either by day or night, I bore the loss of it. I worked long and hard. In the day I endured the heat and drought, and at night the chilling frost, and I did not sleep for taking care of what was yours. I served you 14 years for your 2 daughters and 6 years for your cattle, and during those years you have changed my wages 10 times. If the God of my father, the God of Abraham, had not been with me, then surely you would have sent me away now empty-handed. But God has seen my suffering and the labor of my hands, and when he spoke to you last night, he was rebuking you." Laban answered and said to Jacob, "These daughters are my daughters, and these children are my children, and these cattle are my cattle, and all that you see is mine. And what can I do this day to my own daughters, or to the children they have borne? Come, therefore, and let us make a covenant, and let it be as a witness between you and me." So Jacob took a stone and set it up for a pillar, and his men gathered stones into a heap. "This heap is a witness between us," Laban said. "May the Lord watch over us when we are absent from each other, so that you will not harm my daughters. God is witness between you and me. Behold, this heap and pillar shall be witness that I will not pass beyond this point to come after you, and you shall not pass beyond this heap and pillar toward me to do me harm. May the God of Abraham and Nahor judge between us." Thus did they make their vows to one another. They called the heaps of stone Mizpah, meaning watchtower, because the Lord himself would be watching over Laban and Jacob to see that each man would fulfill his vow. Jacob offered up a sacrifice upon the mountain, and called his family and his men together to break bread and eat with him. And after they had eaten, they spent all night on the mountain. Early in the morning, Laban rose, kissed his grandsons and his daughters, and gave his blessing to them, and departed on the return journey to his own land. Jacob also went his way. And thus was the final parting between the family of Abraham, the Hebrews of Canaan, and the people of the old country. For neither Jacob nor Laban nor their sons would pass that pillar or the heap of stones and meet again. By the vow of Jacob and Laban, the descendants of Abraham were freed of their ties with their forefathers in the land of Babylonia. And from that time on, they were a nation in themselves.